The year is 2022. The streaming wars are in a brand new, bloodier era as of a few weeks ago, with an uncertain and expensive future. The undisputed streaming king of the past decade, Netflix, is finally bleeding. And everyone else, from Prime Video to HBO Max to Disney Plus, is sharpening their swords and coming for the crown. What the hell happened? How did the untouchable Netflix finally come down to earth? Let's break it down in today's Marketing Monday. And if you want to invest in any one of these companies, consider heading to public.com/Atrioc. It is a clean, easy to use interface. You can also follow different investors on the app and see what they're trading. Most importantly, it does not sell your data to hedge funds. And if you sign up using this page, you can get up to $300 in a free stock. You guys heard of this little company called Netflix? Used to be a DVD rental company. They just sent DVDs by mail to you until one day they decided to do this. They had a little bit of an online streaming component, and this quickly became bigger than their regular DVD business. And this was going really well. In fact, nobody else in the world understood how important online streaming would become. So they let all of their content go to Netflix for basically free. Shows like Friends, shows like Seinfeld, shows like The Office were all on Netflix at once, even though Netflix didn't make them. Until around 2010 and 11. And that's when everyone started to realize, oh shit, we shouldn't give Netflix this stuff for so cheap. And that's when Netflix Chief Content Officer Ted Sarandos had this iconic quote. I referenced this quote a bunch of times. We need to become HBO faster than HBO can become us. And what this quote actually meant was, we need to make original content like HBO does before a company like HBO learns how to do online streaming. He wasn't just talking about HBO, he's talking about Disney and everyone else. Everyone that makes content is gonna figure out streaming eventually. We had to figure out how to do content before they do. And they started to make this, a show called House of Cards. This is the first original content from Netflix. And this led to massive growth for Netflix. They were way ahead of the game. And because it worked so well, they outspent everyone else. By 2020, they were spending $17.3 billion on TV shows and movies. Their nearest competitor was Prime Video, spending $7 billion. They made shows like Squid Game. They made movies like Don't Look Up. They made Stranger Things, global phenomenon, huge success. They even got so far ahead that in early 2022, they greenlit a show about Blockbuster owners. That's how far ahead they are of their former rival Blockbuster. They've killed Blockbuster so long ago that they rubbed it in by making a show about Blockbuster owners. And then a few weeks ago, this happened. And this looks like one of those stock graphs you see in cartoons. In a very short period of time, Netflix has gone from a company worth $305 billion, one of the largest 25 companies on planet Earth, to now around 70 to 80 billion, which is a 73% decrease. And they're no longer even in the top 150 companies on Earth. When I say 300 billion to 80 billion, it still sounds big, right? You can't really understand the scale of what I'm saying. I think our brains sometimes tune out when they hear big numbers. So to put it in context, I created this. In the time that I've been playing Elden Ring, since the game came out and I kept playing, I'm still playing my first playthrough of Elden Ring. In that time period, Netflix has lost the combined value of all of Starbucks, all of Uber, all of Nintendo, all of KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut, all of the net worth of LeBron James, and then top it off, another $1 billion. This is how much Netflix has fallen. And you might be asking, why? That's what we're gonna cover today. I'm gonna explain the two key reasons that are leading to Netflix's current woes and trouble. I'm gonna explain what they're trying to do to combat it, whether it'll work. And then at the end of this presentation, I'm gonna tell you who's winning. What went wrong? This is what went wrong. This is Netflix's subscriber growth per quarter. You might notice they've never had a bad quarter until just now. They've grown subscribers every single quarter, 4 times a year. It always goes up. And they've said, we are on track for 1 billion subscribers. Unfortunately, at right about 225 million, it looks like they might have topped out. A 200,000 subscriber loss. Now it's a minor loss, but it's the top of the curve that's scary. This is live Netflix headquarters. This is live what Wall Street heard. The stock had been valued as if it was an extremely high growth company. And the second they started to say, not only are we losing subscribers now, but we're on track to lose more, that scared the shit out of Wall Street. What was worse was that the subscribers that were leaving were not just new subscribers who often have a pretty high rate of churn. Netflix customers canceling service increasingly includes long-term subscribers. So people who have been with Netflix for a very long time were finally deciding they had enough. Enough was enough. And that was extra bad. Again, if you look back at some of my older Marketing Mondays, I mentioned that Netflix had a way lower churn rate than almost all the competitors. People treated Netflix like a bill. Like you pay the electricity bill, you pay the water bill, and you pay the Netflix. Netflix no longer has that luxury. They kept raising prices, and some of the content, the quality of their content has changed. Netflix removed the good shows and increased the prices. Now they want to add ads. It's like they want us to cancel our membership. And this is one of those accounts that only posts like shit everyone agrees with so they can get a ton of likes. It's like a fake content farm. So you know everyone agrees with this because it's not a real person. If you flash back even 1 year, Netflix, when they were riding high, everything was going great. They were $600 a share. They were saying this: our competition isn't Disney Plus. It isn't Prime Video. It's TikTok, Fortnite, and sleep. We are so important. We're fighting for every hour of our customers' day. And then all of these guys said, no, we're your real competition and started stepping up their spending in a major way. This stuff was not their problem. This is content spending at all of their competition. You'll notice Netflix is not the biggest on this chart. They used to be. Now Disney and Warner Bros., which is HBO Max, is spending more. That advantage they had is kind of disappearing. All of these companies have something Netflix doesn't have, which is content is not their main business. When Netflix spends $20 billion on shows, they have to make $20 billion plus on you watching those shows. If Amazon spends $20 billion on shows, they don't give a shit because they can make the money back from you just being a Prime user for longer. iPhones are a great business. iPhones cost a certain amount to make and sell for 60% more. So these companies are using what are much better businesses to subsidize cheap content streaming. They're basically spending money on content without caring that it does well. Netflix has to care. And that's what's causing Wall Street to finally wake up and realize the competition is real for Netflix and cut their stock price. Those are the two main reasons they're kind of tanking. Competition is up and people are unsubscribing. What are they going to do about it? That's what I wanted to know. So they have a couple things that they've announced they're going to do. Some of them are cringe, some of them seem good, and some of them are downright weird. First off, the bad, they're laying people off. They have to cut costs. Layoffs are always a sign of mismanagement. You overhired and now you have to let them go. They already announced layoffs of about 2% of their workforce, and they can't cut content spending or they'll fall behind these guys. And so that's what's scary for Netflix is they have to find a way to make not only more shows because they can't outspend, but kind of better. They have to be able to make better shows. The second thing they're doing is going back on their word. This is a tweet from Netflix in 2017 where they said, love is sharing a password. Nowadays, you try to share a password, you start getting this pop-up. If you don't live with the owner of this account, you need your own account to keep watching. Yeah, they're locking down on password sharing hard. They estimate that 1/3 of America uses a borrowed Netflix password. So they're hoping that those people will all subscribe to Netflix if they can't borrow passwords. What may happen instead is everyone gets angry and unsubscribes altogether. It remains to be seen. The next thing they're doing, well, actually, they'd never do this, right? I'm sorry, I must be misreading my notes. I remember their CEO saying they will never have commercials. I remember this. I remember this article. This is only in 2020 after all. It wasn't that long ago. So I must be misreading my notes when they announced ads are reportedly coming to Netflix as soon as late 2022. Well, they have to get subscribers up and they have to get revenue up. Now, this is an ad-supported option. They think there's a large cohort of people that would be happy to watch ads as long as they get the service for cheaper. And they may be right. From a business POV, this is not crazy. After all, Hulu does it. In fact, over half of all Hulu subscriptions are ad-supported. So those are like the main business things they're doing to try and turn their ship around. Whether they'll be successful remains to be seen. They're also trying some weird stuff. This is Netflix's gaming option. All of these games are being played with a remote on Netflix. Like if you got nothing to watch on Netflix, you'll not unsubscribe because you want to play terrible mobile games. I think this idea is one of their worst. This seems like a huge waste of money and time, and I doubt it will convince even one person to stay with Netflix who wouldn't have. If we want to go even weirder, they're getting into basically what Disney's really good at, merchandising. Only they're doing it like this. These are called the Chilleez. which are their new mascots they want to sell merch for. They're called the Chilleez because of Netflix and chill. I've already purchased one, the red one, whose name is Scarlet. This is Scarlet. You can get it for $25, a steal for something that can give you guaranteed nightmares if you have boring dreams. I've shown you some cringe. I've shown you some bad. What might be interesting, they're getting into live streaming, specifically around comedy specials. They're adding in a way for maybe you to be able to watch a live comedy show from your Netflix account, which is interesting. Again, all of this stuff, when you look at it in aggregate, kind of feels like Netflix is floundering. They've sort of are a little rudderless. Everyone else is rich. In fact, they're more rich than Netflix. Netflix is an $80 billion company. Amazon is a multi-trillion dollar company. Apple's a $3 trillion company. Netflix cannot outspend anyone. So if they want to remain top dog, they have to find a way to do more with less. And so to do that, they are announcing a bunch of drastic changes to the type of projects they greenlight. They're going to stop greenlighting expensive vanity projects like The Irishman. Basically, they're not going to give Martin Scorsese a blank check and say, make whatever you want as long as it's on Netflix. So they looked at the data, and I looked at the data as well. And it turns out this might be bad news if you're a fan of like critically acclaimed stuff, because this chart shows the most watched Netflix films. The actual best performing thing on here is Red Notice, which got a 36% on the tomatometer. But it turns out that dumb, fun movies, the audience loves them. And that's all that really matters. It turns out that Netflix's goal, which for many years has been like a pride point to sort of win more Emmys than established Hollywood media, doesn't matter. People who have been in meetings with Netflix all over Hollywood have noticed that one show name keeps popping up over and over again, and I bet you cannot guess it. What's a Netflix show that they would like think is a perfect success story? Squid Game, Stranger Things, Space Force. The answer? Emily in Paris. In every meeting Netflix has been having with talent, they've been saying, can we get a show that's more like Emily in Paris? This is their North Star. They are being tasked with finding more shows that are like this, because it turns out Emily in Paris is relatively cheap to create, highly bingeable. The audience loves it and makes memes about it. Critics don't watch and don't care. And most importantly, it hits a niche that they have been calling ambient TV. Ambient TV is the idea that it's a show that you can kind of just have on. They want more of that. Background noise TV. That's their strategy for remaining on top of this hill. But who do we actually think is gonna win? Is it Disney Plus? Maybe. Disney Plus has many advantages over Netflix. They're spending more than Netflix. They can make way more money on successful properties. If they make a hit show, they can make billions off of toys, theme parks, plays. Kids don't care what it costs. If this kid wants to see Frozen 3, she will cry until her parents sign up for Disney Plus if it's exclusive. That being said, even with all of that, Disney has some of the same problems as Netflix. Disney Plus is costing Disney a fortune because when you release movies and shows direct to Disney Plus, you lose all the money you would have made from either selling DVDs, selling them streaming services, going to movie theaters. Disney used to make an absolute fortune selling Marvel shows to Netflix. Now they don't do that. All that money's gone, and they're not growing subscribers at a fast enough rate for the spending on cost. They're a little bit better at it than Netflix, but it's still a problem. It doesn't really solve the bigger issue, which is that content is not a great business. So maybe that leaves Prime Video. Amazon Plus has the great benefit of having infinite money. They have Jeff Bezos' wallet. They have a larger library size than everyone else basically combined. There are more movies and TV shows on Prime Video than everyone else. In fact, this quote was quite revealing. Money, by the standards of any other studio in the history of television, was no issue. Amazon just had to find the right project. Amazon spent $1 billion to make a Lord of the Rings show because Jeff Bezos said, we need a Game of Thrones. Their problem is, first of all, kind of a lackluster UI and discovery system, and they haven't proven to be very good with originals. So they have some downsides too. They're not really necessarily the guaranteed winner. Maybe the winner is going to be HBO Max. I would have counted out HBO Max a few years ago, absolutely, because they're just so much smaller. But in fact, they've bulked up quite a bit. The Discovery HBO merger and combination has created a pretty robust lineup. I mean, they have Rick and Morty, for Christ's sakes. They've basically married a broad base of bingeable content with the high-end, like, premier prestige stuff that HBO makes. And HBO has consistently, year over year, managed to make shows people talk about. Euphoria is a smash hit. People talk about it every single new episode. It trends on Twitter. And it doesn't even cost them that much to make. And they've done this, which was kind of the new thing. They had Project Popcorn, which was their internal code name for their plan to release big movies the same day they're in theaters on HBO Max. And this has been huge for subscribers. They've had massive growth from this. It was very successful. And so I compared them, because I'm a Game of Thrones nerd, to Tyrion Lannister, which is this quote: "A small man can cast a very large shadow." HBO has not spent nearly as much as everybody else, but they've got the reach, the success of a much larger company. It's been actually quite impressive. Speaking of Game of Thrones, I want to very briefly compare every single character in Game of Thrones to one person in the streaming war. Blockbuster's the Mad King. Netflix is Robert Baratheon. Apple TV is the Tyrells. Jeff Bezos is, of course, Tywin Lannister. HBO Max is Tyrion Lannister. Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus are the Starks. Peacock is those stupid characters, the Sand Snakes from season 5. Really, really annoying. I had to put this back in because it's very important to me. By the way, I'll take no questions. This is 100% correct. I will take no questions. But you may notice if you're a Game of Thrones fan, there is one character missing. Kind of a really, really important, major, powerful character. Where's Daenerys and her dragon? Who is the Queen of Dragons? Who's the most powerful person in the whole show? Ladies and gentlemen, the real winner of the streaming wars is YouTube. When I looked at all of the data, when I studied this whole industry top to bottom, what I started to realize was the numbers that these streaming services are pulling in are not that good for what they cost. And so I looked at the numbers for YouTube. For 2019, this is YouTube's ad revenue versus Netflix's total revenue. So this is the money YouTube makes just on ads. 2019, YouTube made $3 billion. Netflix made $4.5 billion. Netflix made 50% more. By 2021, up to $6 billion from YouTube ad revenue and $7.2 billion from Netflix revenue. Late last year, when Netflix was at its all-time high, doing amazing, they were making $7.5 billion, and YouTube was making $7.2 billion. And then, just now, in the most recent quarterly report, YouTube smashed them. YouTube is now making more money just from ads on YouTube videos than Netflix's 200 million paying subscribers. And I want to ask you a question. How much do you think that YouTube spends on content? Netflix spends $20 billion a year. How much does YouTube spend to make these kind of revenues? Nothing. They spend nothing. So while Netflix might spend $27 million to hire actors, hire a director, build sets, and film a show like Squid Game, and that's cheap. $27 million is incredibly cheap. YouTube gets Mr. Beast to do it. Mr. Beast fronts all the costs. YouTube gets a cut of the ad revenue. They get half. So it's a business that has basically zero marginal costs and massively growing revenues. And when you look at numbers like that, you realize that Netflix is absolutely YouTube is absolutely roasting the competition. No one else is coming close. I think a perfect example of this is a channel like Summoning Salt, because Netflix would never greenlight a show like Summoning Salt. The idea is they want to make something broad and kind of dumb that'll appeal to everybody. But on YouTube, because the costs are so different, you can make micro niche content that appeals to just a certain brand of people very hard. And you have infinite amount of people doing this. Summoning Salt will be very boring to my dad, for example, but it's very interesting to me. So instead of Netflix trying to find a broad show they can spend millions of dollars on that appeals to us both to save money, YouTube can just have different YouTubers for each person and make money on all of them. And that is why they are the big dog in the room. And that is why, instead of looking at this and subscribing to this, perhaps you should subscribe to this. Maybe check me out. Thank you for watching Marketing Monday.